It wasn't long into my second year at uni when I met this guy, Andy Stalker. From the get-go, there was a rhythm to our friendship, a pattern that seemed to repeat itself like a bad dream. I'd somehow land in a mess, and he'd be the one pulling me out. Take the time he landed me a job at the bar, where he worked as a supervisor. I'd lost my damn shoes. Literally. Had to call him, voice sheepish, saying something like, "Mate, I can't come in. I've lost my shoes." Not even joking. And when he realized I was serious, he didn't laugh. Just wired me some cash for a cab into town so I could grab a new pair. That was just one of the many times he kept me from going down in flames. By the time we graduated, I honestly would have done anything for him. And I mean anything. I just didn't know then that I'd be forced to prove that. Under circumstances that still make my skin crawl. After graduation, Stalker and I moved into a flat together. It worked, in a chaotic, mismatched way. Then about a year later, he announced he was off to Thailand for 6 months. Said he wanted to travel, explore, live a little. I was gutted to see him go, but I was also genuinely stoked for him. The morning he left, it was all bear hugs and promises to stay in touch. And at first, we did. Emails flew back and forth, updates here and there. Then he told me he was extending his trip another 6 months. Said he'd fallen in love with the place. That's when the replies started slowing down. A month passed, then 2. Silence. I told myself not to panic. People get busy, people change. Still, after 3 weeks without a word, I finally cracked and sent him a message. "You all right, mate? How's Thailand treating you?" A week later, he finally got back to me. Said everything was golden, that he was way up north, deep in the mountains, at some off-grid commune near the Myanmar border. He described it like some sort of wild retreat, where tourists could live off the land and escape the modern world for a bit. Said he'd learned to drive, picked up the art of traditional Thai tattooing, even dipped into a bit of monk training. Yeah, seriously, mini monk boot camp. It sounded weird, but it was so him. I figured it was just another one of his madcap escapades. But that email, turns out it was the last I'd ever received from him. 2 more months drifted by. Nothing. Radio silence. I tried not to read too much into it, convinced myself he was just off the grid or wrapped up in his new life. But the longer I waited, the more it gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the feeling, like something was off. Still, I shoved the worry down. I wasn't his keeper, right? People grow apart, then. Just when the silence had started to feel permanent, I got a phone call. It was his mum. Her voice was tight, frayed at the edges. She sounded scared and pissed. I'd always assumed he was keeping in contact with her, no matter what. So hearing that he'd vanished from her radar too, that twisted the knife. I told her I hadn't heard anything either. And she said she was going to contact the Thai authorities and report him missing. She promised to keep me in the loop. And when she did, it wasn't comforting. The Thai police had managed to track him down to some remote jungle outpost, a commune way up in the north, close to the border. He told them he was fine, claimed he was there voluntarily, and technically, With his visa still active, there wasn't much they could do. But when they asked him to reach out to his family, to let his mum know he was okay, he refused. Didn't even try. That was when the dread really started to settle in, like rot beneath the floorboards, invisible but spreading. Something wasn't right with Stalker, and deep down, I think I already knew. The Thai police didn't sugarcoat it. When they found Stalker, he looked rough. Not just worn out from travel, but sickly, hollowed. And the way he spoke? Disjointed, scattered. They suspected drugs, or maybe something deeper unraveling in his mind. Some kind of psychotic break. Either way, it wasn't good. Hearing that gutted us. Something was happening to him out there. Something bad. And he was slipping further and further away. I felt helpless. But his mum, Sue, had already started piecing together a plan. Stalker's dad had passed away a few years back. His sister, disabled. Sue herself wasn't in the best shape health-wise, and none of them were in any condition to fly halfway around the world. But me, I was young, able-bodied, and most importantly, I could go. Only thing holding me back was money. That's when Sue made me an offer that knocked the wind out of me. She and Stalker's sister were willing to pay for everything. Flights, accommodations, whatever it took. The moment felt surreal. Like I'd stepped into one of those nightmares where everything's just a little too sharp around the edges. Not because I didn't want to go, but because it should have been the other way around. If anything, it should have been Andy rescuing me. Still, there was never a question. Not even for a second. I said yes. I cleared the time off from work, packed a bag, and boarded a flight to Thailand to bring my best mate home. 17 hours in the air left me wrung out, barely functional. I spent the first day just trying to shake the jet lag and get my bearings. Then Sue sent through the instructions. The real journey was just beginning. That long-haul flight? Just the warm-up. The next leg was a 14-hour bus ride from Bangkok to a remote northern town called Nai Soi. Compared to the bus, the flight had been first class. The roads were rough, sometimes just dirt and rocks, and the motion sickness hit me hard. By the time I stepped off that bus, I was dizzy, dehydrated, and questioning every decision I'd made. It was in Nai Soi that I met Prem, my local guide. Sue had arranged everything in advance. Prem knew of the place I was trying to get to, the jungle outpost where Andy had vanished. But he made it clear he wouldn't be going the whole way with me. He didn't just seem hesitant, he seemed scared. Prem warned me that the area was crawling with danger. Bandits, smugglers, opium growers with rifles slung over their shoulders, armed rebels. It was a no-man's land where law didn't exist. That's exactly why the commune had set up there. They wanted to disappear, to live without rules or oversight. Total freedom. But Prem said that kind of freedom comes at a cost. He told me the only stories he'd ever heard about the place were dark ones. A village full of crazy Farang Sosi. He called it Farang, foreigners, Westerners, people like me. He said the village used to be called Wat Khao Thong, and it had once been home to ordinary Thai families. But then, the Farang moved in, one after another, and the locals started packing up and leaving. Within 10 years, it was nearly empty of Thai people. Just a few left behind acting as intermediaries, gatekeepers for this growing foreign cult that had renamed the place Peace Town. I tried to laugh it off. Said if a bunch of hippies could make a life out there, surely I'd be all right too. Preem's face went cold. He told me it wasn't that simple. Peace Town wasn't some backpacker paradise. They paid steep protection fees to keep the smugglers off their backs, and no one just showed up to join them. You had to be invited, recruited, and not just from anywhere, from places like Bangkok or Phuket, where the vulnerable and the lost went looking for meaning. They didn't take just anyone. They wanted people who were all in, who could give themselves completely, who'd burn their bridges behind them and never look back. That didn't sound like the Andy I knew. The only thing Stalker had ever been devoted to with any kind of fanaticism was his hopeless football team, Huddersfield Town. That was it. That was who he was, wasn't it? We knew Andy was out there, somewhere beyond the tree line, buried in that tangle of green and mud. And there was no way in hell I was backing out now. Not after coming this far. Not after seeing what his family was going through. Prem told me the trek to Peace Town would take 2 full days on foot. That meant an overnight stop in a place called Watkarani, a small jungle village supposedly controlled by Burmese rebels. The words alone sent a chill crawling down my spine. But the moment we arrived, the sight was worse. Teenagers, kids really, wandering around with rifles slung over their backs, cigarettes dangling from their lips like they were born to it. The air felt charged, dangerous, still. The 9-hour hike to get there had stripped every ounce of energy out of me. My legs were jelly, my head pounding from the heat. All I wanted was food and a place to collapse. The village offered both, rough as it was. After a meal of sticky rice and something I didn't dare identify, Prem and I were shown to a small wooden shack where we'd be sleeping. We were dead on our feet. I remember the cot creaking as I lay down, the sounds of the jungle humming outside like a broken engine. Then, around 9 that night, a young rebel shoved his head through the doorway. The barrel of his gun caught the moonlight. He barked something sharp in Burmese. Prem's face drained of color. "We must go," he whispered. "Commander speaks. Everyone must attend." So, we followed. The village center was just a clearing between huts, dimly lit by torches. Maybe 100 people were gathered in a rough semicircle. When they saw me, the foreigner, they stopped talking. Eyes lingered, curious, cold. At the front stood 2 men, both rebels. One standing tall, the other kneeling, with his hands tied behind his back. I leaned toward Prem. "What's going on?" He just shook his head. "I don't know." I wanted to believe it was some sort of ritual, a speech, anything other than what my gut was already screaming. But then, the man standing began to speak. Loud, angry, his words slicing through the crowd. I couldn't understand a word, but I didn't need to. His tone said it all. The word traitor hung in the air like poison. Then he raised his pistol, The crowd went silent. Dozens of young rebels shot their hands into the air, volunteering. He picked one at random, handed him the weapon. The kid stepped forward, trembling with a kind of wild excitement. And then he fired. The sound cracked through the night, sharp and final. The kneeling man jerked, then crumpled. The cheer that followed was deafening, wild, primal. People rushed forward, kicking and stomping the corpse like it was some grotesque celebration. Prem and I stood frozen, ghosts among the living. Neither of us spoke. We waited until the frenzy burned out, then slipped quietly back to our shack. I don't think I'll ever forget the sound of that gun. Lying on the cot later, I stared up at the ceiling, feeling the thin mosquito net press against my skin. Outside, gunshots echoed again, celebratory this time. Prem whispered in the dark, voice trembling, "We should not have come here." He was right. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to get out while we still could. But I couldn't. Andy was out there. Whatever hell this was, he was somewhere beyond it. I had no choice but to keep going. So we lay there until dawn, managed maybe 2 hours of shallow, haunted sleep. Then we were back on our feet, trudging into the jungle again before the sun had fully risen. I've glossed over it, but walking through that jungle, it was like living inside a fever dream. The air was thick enough to choke on. The heat, relentless. Every sound felt like it was watching you. The snap of a twig, the distant hiss of something moving through the brush. Prem kept warning me about tigers. Actual tigers. Said they came down from the hills sometimes to hunt. But the truth? It wasn't the animals that scared me the most. It was the sameness. The jungle swallowed everything. The sky, the path, the sense of direction. Every step forward looked exactly like the one before. And the deeper we went, the more it felt like the world was quietly folding in on itself. We walked for a few more hours before Prem finally stopped. A narrow stream cut through the jungle like a silver scar, its water shallow and murky, winding deeper into the trees. He pointed to it, said this was as far as he'd go. I tried to persuade him. I didn't beg, not quite, but it was close. I didn't want to go alone, not in this place. He gave me an apologetic smile, one of those tight, sad ones that said everything he couldn't. "I'm sorry," he said softly, eyes lowered. "I really am." And just like that, the silence between us grew heavy. As he wished me luck and turned to leave, I stood there staring after him, thinking, Jesus, I'm gonna die out here, aren't I? My heart thudded so hard, it made my ribs ache. Prem left me with 2 warnings. The first, if you see a tiger, don't run. Not right away. Drop your pack. Let it go for that. Then, and only then, run. The second, there's a village up ahead, the only one before Peacetown. Don't stop. Don't talk. Just pass through. He didn't explain why, but I'd find out soon enough. I followed the stream as instructed, its banks overgrown and slippery with moss. The heat hung thick as soup. The deeper I went, the quieter the world became. No bird song, no insects, just the soft shuffle of my own boots in the dirt. Eventually, I reached the village Prem had warned me about. From a distance, it didn't look threatening. No bandits, no guns, just a bunch of kids playing near the water. One girl, maybe 8 or 9, held what looked like a paint can. She lifted it to her mouth and drank. At first, I thought it was river water, but when she got closer, the smell hit me. Sharp, chemical, dizzying, solvent. "What the bloody hell are you drinking?" I blurted out. She didn't understand, of course. Even if she'd spoken English, I doubt it would have mattered. She was off her head. She laughed, this high-pitched, drunken giggle, and the other kids joined in. They followed me as I walked, keeping pace, staring like I was the main attraction at a zoo. I didn't shake them until the adults came out. Rough-faced men and women, pushing the kids aside, glaring at me with hollow eyes. Then came the offers. Everything you could think of, shouted at me from doorways and alleys. Drugs, guns, women, wives. One man even offered me his daughter with a crooked smile and a dead look in his eyes. It was all done with a sort of hollow enthusiasm, like a village surviving off the scraps of corruption. When I finally passed through, heart hammering, I couldn't decide what scared me more, the tigers or the people. But I told myself I was through the worst of it. I had to be. I was wrong. A few hours later, with the sun bleeding low into the trees, I saw it. Another cluster of buildings in the distance. My pulse quickened. I thought I'd made it. But I hadn't even crossed the 50-meter mark when 2 figures emerged from the tree line and came straight at me. White guys, tanned like old leather, blonde, with scraggly hair and lean, wiry frames. They carried spears, real, handmade things, carved wood and sharpened tips. And they didn't hesitate to point them at my chest. The taller one spoke first. He had an Australian accent and a voice like gravel. "Looks like you're a bit lost, mate. Best turn around now. Get yourself gone." I could barely breathe, let alone speak. But I forced the words out. "I'm looking for someone. Andy Stalker. He might go by Stalker now. British guy." The other man, he had a European accent, maybe German or Austrian, narrowed his eyes and said flatly, "No Andy here." Then, "Who are you?" I held my hands up, palms empty. "I'm his friend, just his friend. If he's not here, I just need to know where he went, that's all." Their posture changed. The tension didn't vanish, but it dulled just a little. The spears dipped an inch. They looked at each other, exchanged a silent conversation. Something in them was softening, and that made me nervous all over again. They lowered their spears, finally. The tension broke, but not enough to breathe easy. One of them told me to stay where I was. "Don't move, don't wander," and then jogged back toward the cluster of buildings. The seconds dragged. When he returned, he gave a short nod to his mate, who jerked his chin at me to follow. That was my first real glimpse of Peacetown. If you ever saw that chess mess in Seattle back in 2020, the so-called autonomous zone, imagine that, but rotting in a jungle, miles from civilization. Every other village I'd passed through had been small, simple, tidy. But this place? It looked feral. Graffiti covered the walls, swirling incoherent symbols layered over each other like a fever dream. Jungle vines had swallowed half the huts. Roofs sagged under damp rot. The air was thick with smoke, weed, wood fire, and something sweeter, rancid. People drifted everywhere, barefoot, dirty, glassy-eyed. Some danced in circles to the dull thud of drums. Others just stared into space. And scattered among them were men with rifles, sunglasses hiding their eyes, watching everything with the blank patience of predators. My escort, the blonde Australian, led me through the chaos to a small concrete house on the edge of the commune. He stopped at the door, gave me a lazy half smile. "Have a good one, mate," he said, then turned and left. Inside, the air was dim and hot. A figure sat, hunched over a rough table, hair hanging down in wild, greasy tangles. For a second, I didn't recognize him. Then my stomach dropped. It was Stalker. He looked like a scarecrow, thin, wiry, beard patchy and unkempt. His skin clung to his bones, and his eyes, when they finally lifted, were bloodshot and shining with a strange light. "Andy?" I said. It took him a moment, like his mind had to catch up to his eyes. Then, suddenly, that familiar grin split his face. "Oh, mate," he laughed, leaping up and pulling me into a hug. "Bloody hell, what are you doing here?" "I came to bring you home," I told him. He blinked, confused but calm, like I just asked him the time. "Why?" That's when everything started to fall apart. I told him to look at himself, to really look. Told him how gaunt he'd become, how he looked like he'd crawled out of a grave. I said he was worrying everyone back home sick. His mum, his sister, everyone. He froze, and something flickered behind his eyes, then hardened. His tone changed. "What's your problem, man?" That was it. I snapped. My problem? My problem is that your mum thinks you're dead," I shouted. "Your sister cries herself to sleep. They were so desperate they paid me to come drag your sorry ass home." My words hit like a slap. He stiffened, and before I knew it, someone else burst through the door. A man with a wild stare and clenched fists, ready to defend Andy. I thought I was about to get my head kicked in, but Andy raised his hand, calming him. The tension hung there for a long second before it broke. We both backed down. After that, he softened, said he'd arranged a place for me to sleep at least. We carried a thin mattress to a small stone hut next to his. The air outside buzzed with night insects and distant drumbeats. While we worked, Andy sighed. "Sorry, mate," he said quietly, "for being off, for acting like I dropped off the face of the earth." He ran a hand through his tangled hair. "It's just, I meant to drop out. I needed to. You get me?" Then he started talking, really talking, about how much he hated his old life, how the grind had chewed him up, the 9 to 5, the bills, the system. "We're all just wage slaves," he said. "Born to pay, work, die. That's not living." And damn it, in parts of it, I could almost see his point. But his answer, his escape, was to vanish into a jungle cult where the air itself felt wrong. I told him his family missed him, that they just wanted to know he was alive. He got quiet then, eyes flicking away. For a moment, I thought I saw the old Andy in there, the one who'd laugh over beers and pull me out of trouble. But then he straightened and said, "Let's talk about it in the morning, yeah? Not now." I didn't push. I figured if I could keep that spark of home alive in him, maybe I could pull him back. Morning could wait. I woke that morning thinking I'd be walking out of the jungle by sunset, heading back to the world of cell service, traffic lights, and sanity. By nightfall, I was certain I'd never leave at all. After breakfast, Andy said he wanted to show me around. He called it a tour. I called it propaganda. He strutted through Peace Town like it was paradise, showing me gardens of wilted herbs, half-built huts, and sunburned people meditating in the dirt. "See, mate? Everyone does their part. No bosses, no bills, just peace." But the place reeked of rot. And the peace he talked about, it felt thin, brittle, like a lie held together with duct tape and delusion. I kept trying to remind him of what he'd left behind. Beer, with mates, family dinners, proper showers. Every time I mentioned home, something flickered behind his eyes. Doubt, regret. He tried to hide it, but I saw it. After lunch, he told me he had something important to do. I told him to go ahead, that I'd rest. He nodded and disappeared into the chaos outside. I stretched out, pulled my boots off, and shut my eyes. Just for a minute. That's when the door creaked open. A woman stepped inside, barefoot, long hair, eyes sharp enough to cut glass. I recognized her from the night before. She'd been clinging to Andy like a vine. "Layla." "Can we talk?" she asked. Her voice was sweet, but her face wasn't. I said sure, not realizing I'd just made a mistake. She got right to it. "You're taking him home, aren't you?" The air in the room changed. When I said yes, she snapped, like a match to dry straw. She started shouting about how I was trying to ruin his life, poison his mind, destroy everything they'd built here. Her words came fast, furious. "You bring bad energy," she screamed. "You want to break us." I raised my hands, tried to calm her down. "I'm not here to break anything, I just..." She cut me off. "Leave. Leave now, and don't come back." When I didn't move, she reached into her pocket. The click of a blade locking into place froze the blood in my veins. It was a folding knife. Big, shiny, ugly. I laughed. Couldn't help it. It just slipped out, high and nervous. "What? You're gonna stab me? In the Peace Village?" Her expression didn't change. Then she lunged. The knife flashed. I stumbled back, heart exploding in my chest, shouting, "Whoa, whoa, what the hell are you doing?" She came at me again, screaming something incoherent, the blade catching the dim light as she swung. The room was tiny. Stone walls, nowhere to run. My boots were off. My back hit the corner. I had no choice. I threw a punch. It connected, hard. The sound was horrible, dull, wet. She staggered back, nose bleeding, eyes wild. And that's when the door burst open. Andy came running in with a few others, faces red and fists clenched. Layla collapsed against the wall, wailing, pointing at me. "He hit me! He just hit me!" They didn't ask questions. Hands grabbed me, rough and fast. Someone kicked my legs out. Someone else dragged me by the arms. I tried yelling, tried explaining, but my voice drowned in the chaos. "Andy, I swear to God she tried to stab me," I shouted as they hauled me outside. He didn't move. He just stood there, frozen, pale, eyes full of disbelief. They shoved me into a small wooden shed and slammed the door. The air was thick, hot, suffocating. Outside, I could hear the murmur of angry voices. I wanted to hate him then. Andy, my best friend. The guy who once loaned me taxi money because I'd lost my shoes. But I couldn't. Not really. If I'd been in his place, maybe I wouldn't have known what to do either. Still, that didn't make the fear any easier to swallow. The voices outside faded, and for a while, there was silence. Then footsteps approached. A man's voice spoke through the door, low, steady, with the kind of authority that made my stomach twist. "You will be punished," he said, publicly, for striking Layla. I swallowed hard. Punished how? No answer. Just the sound of retreating footsteps, fading into the hum of the jungle until there was nothing left but my own ragged breathing and the heavy, unshakable feeling that I wouldn't survive to see another sunrise. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I've never known fear like that in my entire life. I truly believed they were going to kill me. Sitting alone in that stifling shed, I couldn't get the image out of my head. The man on his knees back in the rebel village, the gunshot, the way the crowd cheered. That memory looped in my skull like a curse. I could see myself in his place. The shot, the cheer, the nothingness after. I thought about running. God, I did. But every time the idea crept up, I remembered the guard outside, armed, impatient, waiting for any excuse to pull the trigger. So I stayed put, told myself to wait for a better chance. When darkness finally swallowed the jungle, I heard footsteps crunching outside. Someone murmured to the guard. Then a voice I recognized cut through the night. Andy. Relief hit me like oxygen. He'd come. He'd finally come to make things right. But then, the door swung open, and I saw what was in his hand. A gun. My stomach turned to stone. He stepped inside, face shadowed, the weapon hanging loosely at his side. I croaked out, "What's the gun for?" He didn't answer, just said, "Get up, come out." My legs felt like they were filled with sand, but I obeyed. Outside, the air was thick, humming with insects. Andy nodded toward the jungle. "Walkman," he said. "Why?" I asked. Then again, louder. "Why, Andy? Nothing." Just that blank expression. The same calm voice. "Walk." That's when it hit me. He was taking me out there to kill me. And worse, he'd volunteered to do it. No, 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 I stammered. You don't have to do this. Please, mate. Think about your mum, your sister, all the stuff we've been through. Shut up, he snapped. Just walk. So I walked. My throat was tight, heart pounding so hard I thought it'd break my ribs. He followed a few paces behind, gun steady, saying nothing. The jungle swallowed us whole. Just the crunch of leaves, the rhythm of my breath, the taste of iron in the air. Finally, he stopped. Here, he said. I turned slowly, expecting the muzzle to be pointed between my eyes. But it wasn't. He was holding the gun loosely now, his expression different, almost pleading. Hit me, he said. What? Hit me, he repeated, louder. It has to look real. It took a second for the meaning to sink in. Then it clicked. He wasn't leading me to my execution. He was giving me a chance. Where? I asked, voice trembling. Anywhere, he said. Just make it look good. Get it over with. So I did. I swung. My fist connected with his mouth, and the impact jolted through my arm. He stumbled back, spat blood onto the dirt. Christ, Andy, I'm sorry. He shook his head, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. Don't be. I asked for it. Then he gave me the plan. Once I was far enough away, he'd fire 3 shots into the air. Shots he'd say were aimed at me as I ran. It would buy me time. He handed me a small torch and a compass. Keep going north, he said. Don't stop for anything. I nodded, too choked up to speak. And one more thing, he said quietly. Promise me, don't come back. That was the last thing he said to me. I turned and ran. Behind me, 3 gunshots cracked through the jungle, sharp, final. And as insane as it sounds, I felt relieved hearing them. It meant he was still alive. It meant the act had worked. It meant I needed to move. I ran until my lungs burned, until the torch flickered and my legs nearly gave out. Somewhere behind me, I heard shouts, angry, distant. Peace Town's search parties spreading out through the darkness. But Andy had given me such a head start, they never caught up. Not that it stopped me from imagining what they'd do if they did. By the time I stumbled into the next village, I was half delirious, soaked in sweat, shaking. I found the first door I could and pounded on it with both fists. Anywhere else in the world, I'd have expected someone to tell me to piss off for waking them in the middle of the night. But out there, in that forgotten corner of the jungle, the door opened without a word. The family who opened that door saved my life. A Thai couple, barefoot, bleary-eyed, kind in the way only people untouched by cruelty can be. They didn't understand a word I said, but they didn't need to. They saw the state I was in, mud-caked, shaking, wild-eyed, and ushered me inside without question. Gave me water, a blanket, a place to collapse. By morning, they'd arranged for someone with a truck to take me back to Naisoi, the same quiet town where this nightmare had started. When I knocked on Prem's door, he stared at me like I'd crawled out of a grave. Then he laughed. A sharp, disbelieving sound. And before I knew it, we were hugging. 2 men who'd both thought they'd never see each other again. From there, everything blurred. Another brutal bus ride, 13 hours back to Bangkok. The chaos of the airport, the silence of the flight home. I remember staring out of the window somewhere over India, wondering if Andy was still alive, or if, by now, someone had realized what he'd done and buried him in that jungle. But the hardest part came after I landed, facing his mum. Sue met me in her front room, clutching a framed photo of Andy like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I sat across from her, every word I'd rehearsed dying on my tongue. I'd made him a promise that I'd tell her he was gone, that he'd died out there, that there was no coming back. He'd begged me for it, said that if anyone thought he was alive, if they tried to reach him, it would put people in danger, that he couldn't leave even if he wanted to, that he'd gone too far, sunk too deep into that place. It's better if they think I'm dead, he'd said. Better for everyone. But sitting there, watching Sue's eyes search mine for hope, I couldn't do it. I tried. God, I tried. Got as far as "I'm sorry, Sue, Andy. And then I broke. The lie shattered in my mouth. I told her the truth. That I'd failed. That I'd found him alive, but couldn't bring him home. That I'd promised him I'd say otherwise. But I just couldn't do it. I told her everything. About the commune, about Layla, about the jungle, and the gunfire, and the moment I ran. When I finished, I expected her to hate me, to scream, to curse, to throw me out. Instead, she reached across the table and took my hand. Her eyes were wet, but steady. You did what you could, she said. You brought us answers. That's more than most ever get. We cried together after that. Me, Sue, and Andy's sister. 3 broken people in a quiet house, holding on to what little was left of him. But her words didn't make the guilt go away. Nothing could. Even now, sometimes, I wake up and think I can still hear those drums from Peacetown echoing faintly through the dark. Andy had gone chasing paradise and found hell instead, and I left him there.